going into our senior year, we kind of had the idea like let's like team up to do freelance. Our school let us use the studio space for the summer. They're like, yeah, if you guys want to work out of the space, like fine. Like we took the entire studio, set it up like our own design studio. You know, we had our desks, we had spots for our team members, which were our classmates that we would hire for projects. We would take the megabus up from Philly to New York every single week, going to networking events and trade shows and trying to get any business we could. And then we'd come back and we'd say, all right, you're a really good illustrator, you're going to do this, you're a really good graphic designer, you do this. And, you know, working with our friends. And by the time we graduated, I think we'd work with over like 20 different companies, like 15 different students that we'd collaborated with. And we were like, this is going to continue. We're having too much fun, and we have clients. So we moved right into his parents' basement.
Hello there, Internet, and welcome to the 3D Print Authority podcast. This is a place where we come together to have a transparent and no BS conversation about the world of 3D printing and technology. My name is Adam Fosnot. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I have been fascinated by 3D printing for as long as I can remember. Let's get started. I love transparency, so full disclosure to the audience. We accidentally didn't hit record. I accidentally didn't hit record. This isn't your fault. So we're going to take two here and kick things off. Adam, I would love it if you could introduce yourself and Dive Design to the audience.
Sure, no problem. Don't mind a do-over. So yeah, I'm Adam. I'm one of the founders of Dive Design. We're a product design and engineering studio in northern New Jersey, about 30 minutes outside of Manhattan. And our focus is developing products, really starting, you know, from nothing, doing that early research, helping companies to position themselves, going through the steps of prototyping, whether that's for a physical product or a business idea or even a new workflow. We apply the same process to anything that we are working on, whether it's trying to solve a problem, something that hasn't been answered yet, or somebody has an idea that they want validated before they start production. We really apply that same design process in order to really create industry-shaping products, right? That's really our goal here, to take a look at everything and see how we can help bridge the gap between technologies and opportunities. And like I said, we use a lot of that design process. Personally, I'm an industrial designer, so I went to school for product design and, you know, was able to secure a really good understanding of the design process that has become invaluable in everything we do now, whether that's a physical product or a business. Like I said, that's our goal.
Awesome, thank you. I'm excited to dive into all those areas, and I would love if we could help the audience get to know you a little bit better by sharing something about yourself a little bit outside of what you do for work.
Sure. So outside of work, it's even tricky answering this the second time. You know, it's not something I think of often. I'm very involved in work and, you know, always in the studio. But I do really love the outdoors. I love traveling. I love experiencing new things. Mountain biking, we're in Boonton, New Jersey, where there's surprisingly lots of nature around here. You can walk out the back and into the woods. So we'll typically take breaks and go for a quick hike. We tried to go magnet fishing the other day, and we lost the magnet pretty quickly. So definitely, you know, enjoy the outdoors to offset the most of my life being in the studio.
Yeah, New Jersey isn't usually the place that I associate with like great outdoor spaces, but it's good to hear that they do exist.
Especially 30 minutes from Manhattan.
Nice. Okay, that's not far at all for outdoor space. What is magnet fishing? Is the magnet the fish, or do you use a magnet for fishing? And clearly, I'm showing my ignorance here. I don't do a lot of fishing.
I believe it's a pretty recent like internet trend. You know, you see YouTube videos, TikToks of people doing this. So long story short, we needed a really strong magnet for a prototype. Right? We had to pull some screws out of a very small prototype. So we needed a magnet. My partner, of course, went on Amazon. He's doing like super powerful magnets. And he saw a magnet fishing kit. And of course, he's seen the videos. So what people do is they'll go to a famous city, or they'll go to an abandoned area, and they'll throw a magnet into the water with a rope attached, and they'll see what they can drag out. people find bikes, they find car parts, they find jewelry, buried treasure, like you don't know what you're gonna find. So we were like, we're in this old industrial town. There used to be all these factories around here. We got a river, let's try it. We used the prototype, the magnet to get the screws out of the prototype, and we headed straight for the woods, and we caught some rocks in the waterfall, and we lost that magnet pretty quickly.
Oh,
yeah.
That sounds so interesting, though.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Nice. In our first take, Adam shared a lot about kind of your childhood and making things and starting some small business ventures. Do you want to touch on any of that?
Yeah. So, I was having trouble separating, life from business. And I realized it really always has been, cohesive for me. And I always was very interested in connecting the dots, leveraging assets, trying to create those assets. When I was in high school, I worked at a pizza place, and I got all of my friends hired because I loved like team building, and I loved bringing people together that really worked well on a team. And we delivered pizza together, and everybody had such a great time. And I always loved that so much. And when I got to college, working on a lamp business, right? 'Cause I loved design. I thought I wanted to be a lighting designer. So working with my friends to design our own home goods and making like an online store and selling at pop-up shops. I always just loved that, the idea of, bringing people together to create awesome things. And it's what I did a lot growing up, always taking things apart and trying to experiment. And, when I met my partner and the idea of dive design came about, it was like a very obvious next step. It wasn't like we'd never thought of a business. It was like, oh, I've been doing all of these things all my life. It's finally time to actually put a name to it and start the company.
Yeah, that's really cool. I have a lot of similarities in your story where I always grew up tinkering, and like had some small, minuscule business ventures here and there where I'd make a few bucks, especially in college. So you went to school for industrial design, and then did dive design start right out of that, or was there kind of a gap in between those two stages of your life?
Yeah, so definitely not enough of a gap. Well,
Okay.
it's a good thing, and also, there's obviously challenges with that. So my partner and I, we were both very, I guess, eager, right? Very adventurous. From freshman year, we were like signing up for all the competitions, and we didn't really know each other. We got paired up for a competition, and we're like, great, we're working together. Like, hi, I'm Adam, and we started working together, and we were up all night. We were, all over the studio, ideas everywhere. We really were like taking this seriously and hitting it off as teammates on this project. And in the end, on that first project, we ended up placing like, it was like number, I don't know, 10 in like this global competition. And we were like, oh, this is really cool. Like we should keep doing these. And we kept, signing up for all these hackathons and competitions, and we started to win them and, really started to take it seriously. Wow, we work really well together. Can we do like other things together? Like after those competitions, we did our internships. Our sophomore year, he was out in California doing SEN on TV products. I was in Brooklyn doing medical devices in an incubator. And after that, we both left with like all of this great experience and connections, and we were still doing freelance. And we started to meet people in Philadelphia where we went to school, all the inventors in the maker community and startups, and it's really blended together. And we started to find people to help out. We just love being involved. We love working with these teams, and again, connecting the dots for people and saying like, oh, you need graphic designer. Like I know somebody in my school who can do that, like bringing them in. And we were both doing this, kind of like helping each other out. And that's when we realized like, this is a lot of fun. We work really well together. We should probably like take this more seriously. Our junior year, going into our senior year, we kind of had the idea like let's like team up to do freelance. Our school let us use the studio space for the summer. They're like, yeah, if you guys want to work out of the space, like fine. Like we took the entire studio, set it up like our own design studio. We had our desks, we had spots for our team members, which were our classmates that we would hire for projects. We would take the megabus up from Philly to New York every single week, going to networking events and trade shows and trying to get any business we could. And then we'd come back and we'd say, all right, you're a really good illustrator, you're going to do this. You're a really good graphic designer, you do this. And, working with our friends. And by the time we graduated, I think we'd worked with over like 20 different companies, like 15 different students that we'd collaborated with. And we were like, this is going to continue. We're having too much fun, and we have clients. So we moved right into his parents' basement, and those were the beginnings.
Man, that is such a cool story. I especially love the taking the megabus from Philly to New York City and trying to drum up business. Um, for you, was that like an intimidating experience? Were you just like too high on the work where it didn't bother you?
That's a really good question, because my blinds are falling down.
Oh, no.
They're just cardboard taped to the window right now. So yes and no. Like I said, growing up, this was who I was. I loved meeting people and, connecting the dots and solving problems and inventing things and designing things. So it was all I'd ever wanted. But I also had really bad social anxiety. Like my freshman year, I could hardly raise my hand in class without like heart palpitations. So for me, it was like this huge step, but it was like the only logical step. When I did the medical device incubator my sophomore year, I think that's really what changed for me, because I knew I wanted to do all these things. I knew I wanted to one day have a company and work with all these people. And when I did this accelerator, I was a designer, a sophomore, on a team of medical students working with an engineering firm, solving problems in a hospital. So, I'm like, hardly even understand the design process. And they're like, all right, go interview 20 doctors in this hospital and put together a presentation 2 weeks later. I couldn't sleep at night, right? I was like, it wasn't the research, it was the fact that I have to come back and present my research to a team of like surgeons and engineers and doctors. And, it was this like huge caliber that I'd never even come close to. So for me, it was like the hardest thing I'd ever done. But of course, you learn a lot from those things. You learn from trauma in a lot of ways, and it forces you to grow. And it helped me to bring down that barrier for myself, which was feeling comfortable doing those things, feeling comfortable sharing ideas and speaking, because I had the energy, or I had the motivation to go out and do it, but it was just incredibly hard. So, it was breaking down those walls to be able to do it with less resistance. That was really essential. And it always just felt so right. It was always like one of my favorite things to do. So
Yeah,
other
thank
than
you.
the hard,
Other than what?
other than like how hard it was like also so enjoyable. Like I loved forcing myself to grow like that, because I enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, I think a lot of us can look back to like seasons of life when like we were really shaped or changed through something that was really hard. I've had my own challenges with anxiety. I've told a number of people, like when I went to high school, if I talked to like a single person all day, that was like a crazy day for me. So
Yep.
I can imagine that it was really hard, but again, gave you some of those skills to kind of help you grow. Um, so it's really cool to be able to point to that experience.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think the biggest thing I learned was like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Mhm.
That it was okay to be uncomfortable, because it was a good thing. It was like I watched a talk that Arnold Schwarzenegger gave years ago, and one of the things that stood out was like he was in the gym doing, for 4 hours a day, multiple times. It would burn so bad, but it only got him more excited, more motivated, because he knew the burn meant that he was getting stronger. And so for me, it was like the same experience. It was like there's nothing else, I wouldn't want to like. This is like the most terrible thing. I couldn't imagine doing more of it, like standing up, speaking in front of these people. But afterwards, I'd feel so much stronger, and I would be so glad that I'd done it. And just keeping that momentum going, continually making it harder. Like if it wasn't uncomfortable, it meant I wasn't growing. So we really forced ourselves into a lot of like situations like that. I mean, before we graduated, I remember we were pitching to a team of surgeons that had this startup in one of the hospital buildings that we had class in. So we would go up to pitch to these doctors, like this process that we were developing. And then we would go down to class and hope that we didn't run into them, because they didn't know we were students there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, it was like fake it to make it. It was, yeah, comfortable with it. And it just helped us to grow very, very quickly. One of the other things we would do was when we had like business calls, when there's a company or a client that we hadn't met and it was going to be a virtual call, we were in the basement of the building we were in, like the design studio. We would go up to the biology studios on the top floor where they had like cadavers and labs and all the plants and stuff. And because they had all the big white walls, we would set up our camera there and do the calls there in the bio building so that people didn't know we were working out of like a university, like design studio.
I imagine someone picking up and being like, "Wait, are you in like the Robert Sherman lab? I know that lab. I went to school there," or some weird coincidence like that.
You would have to keep like the anatomical models like out of the frame.
Yeah, you just push them all up in the corner and then have your conference call and set everything back up.
Yeah.
I love it. The other thing that stood out to me was it seems like you got paired with a pretty great partner. Hey there, it's Adam. If you're enjoying this video, could you go ahead and tap the like button? It's totally free for you, and through the magic of internet algorithms, it will help more people see the podcast. Thanks. Kind of on that first project, I can think of college projects where I had really good partners, but I can think of a lot more when I didn't have great group projects. So kind of how has your partnership changed over time as you took it from like student competitions to running a real business?
Yeah, it's absolutely evolved in so many ways. My partner Alex and I, we have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, and I think that's what's enabled it to be such an amazing partnership, right? What I lack, he makes up for. We're very complementary. He is the business guy, right? He studied industrial design, but he concentrated in business, and all his life he grew up buying and selling and hustling, right? He would, as like a middle school student, was running around mowing people's lawns for cash. Then he started buying and selling cars when he was in high school, and he sold over like 200 cars or something like that. It was just his hobby, his passion. So he was comfortable at a young age going out there and making sales, right? Talking to people, whether they were like 4 times his age at that time, didn't matter to him. Where me, I was like, the hermit in the back of the class, like dissecting things in middle school, because I'd rather like work with my hands and design things and do research than I would talk to someone. So I was always more of like the fly on the wall, the understanding the process, understanding the clients and the needs and the requirements, and I would write all the proposals early on, and then he would take the proposals and he would do the talking, where I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it, or he would go out and set up like all of the business accounts that we need, getting the LLC, figuring out what we had to do to not be an illegal company working out of our apartment. He was making sure that we were doing things the right way and, having those conversations. So it was definitely a very powerful partnership that we had. And over time, as both industrial designers, there were challenges, right? Because we both want to do everything. We both want to design everything and, use our idea. And so we've definitely learned we've learned where we fit in the process, what we do best at. Especially early on, we were doing everything. We were doing the designing, the prototyping, the business, the marketing. Now we have people on our team, so we get to focus on growing the business more so than we do having to, prototype every nut and bolt in every product, which has also really enabled us to, more so work to our strong suits than be involved in everything.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear you say that. It's something that I've heard from a lot of other founders and founder groups is that having a co-founder with some different skills and then figuring out where the two of you fit within the scope of the business is incredibly important. So I'm happy that you two have that. Looking at kind of who you serve, I know you've brought up prosthetics and medical a couple times. Is that the bulk of the type of company that you work with, or is there more of a broad range?
Yeah, so it's across the board, especially at the start. When we started out, and it was really, of course, we had to take what we could get as students, as a startup, but it also made us so much stronger, right? Because we got comfortable with never turning down a project. somebody would say, hey, we need this thing that does this that we've never even heard of, let alone worked on. And we said, heck yeah, we applied the same process to figure it out. So, we always had that mentality of being comfortable with that uncertainty. So early on, like one of our first clients was the Finnish long drink, a liquor company from, where is it? Denmark? I can't remember exactly where they're from. No, Finland. It's in the name. So used to the name, I didn't even click. But we were doing their like branding and sales sheets, and my twin brother's a graphic designer, and he was helping us out doing like branding and marketing for this company. On the other hand, we were doing like survival tools and these tools that how to survive like crazy conditions to save people's lives. And so the diversity was just incredible, and it taught us so much. So then fast forward, we definitely honed in on products and companies that are meaningful, that we want to work on, that we think will have an impact. We love taking an opportunity of taking a problem and finding that right opportunity, not just making something to make something, but making something that will actually make a difference in some way. And of course, medical, healthcare, prosthetics, working with animals, that fits that so well. And it really has become a big part of the business. So, we do the consulting on one hand, we do product design and engineering and all the conventional stuff. But since we started working with a company called Bionic Pets, we've really started to diversify the type of work that we do and build a bit of a niche in additive manufacturing, because it really opened our eyes to the possibilities. We didn't start using additive because we were like, oh, this is neat. Like it actually solved a real problem for us, a business problem, margins, a product that couldn't previously be made. So we got very excited by it, and we started to continue in that direction. We became really ingrained with Bionic Pets, and from there, we just found all these other opportunities to apply a similar mentality, a similar workflow, and it's really becoming a different part of the company in a lot of ways.
Okay, interesting. I can definitely relate to you're just starting out and you'll just take any project that comes towards you. I've taken on some side consulting projects that don't necessarily align with where I see our business going long term. But to your point, I think it's been valuable because I've learned so much. I think you can learn kind of what types of jobs that you like and what types of jobs that you don't like, and kind of again where your skills really fit.
Yeah.
But can you dive more into Bionic Pets? Who are they, and how do you work with them?
Sure. So this was a really big opportunity for us. Personally, like other than industrial design, my passion growing up was always prosthetics. My father was an industrial designer, my mother, pediatrician. So I always had like design, but also medical and working with people and the emotional connection you have to like helping someone. And I think when I was in 8th grade, I saw a TED Talk by Scott Summit, who was like pioneering 3D printed prosthetics. And this was like 8 years ago, 9, I don't even remember. But at that moment, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, that's exactly it. Taking something so new, like the technology component that I was so obsessed with, combining it with changing people's lives, creating parts of their body that, was so foreign to them. After you lose a limb, putting a metal pipe on your body is just like this foreign object that it's so hard to connect with. And he was creating these designs that were merging the two. And really changing how people saw themselves. And I thought that was the most fascinating thing. But of course, like as an 8th grader, like how the heck do you do that, right? What path do you take to be able to do that type of thing? And of course, industrial design, had the most elements. I knew I hated math, so I wasn't going to be an engineer. I knew I wanted to experiment and play with technology, so I wasn't going to be a clinician or technician. Industrial design was it. So still having that love going to school for design. Like I got very lucky. My school merged with a medical school. So my sophomore year, I was taking classes with medical students and going to the hospitals. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. And throughout that, and throughout all the events we would go to, I met some people who were 3D printing prosthetics like in a garage. And it was like crazy. I'd used 3D printers for like a few prototypes, but like I'd never seen somebody 3D printing things like that in their garage. And I would, build relationships with those people because I was just so fascinated by it. And by the time I was a senior, one of those connections reached out and it's like, hey, I know you like that, 3D printing design thing. I've been working with this company, Bionic Pets, but I actually just got a job building exoskeletons out in Washington. Any chance you could pick up on this project? And I just like, it's like one of those moments you just collapse. Like, oh my gosh, like this guy, like who runs Bionic Pets, Derek, I've seen him on Animal Planet building prosthetics for elephants. Like, I can't believe this is happening. It was like the the most surreal, moment being still in school and getting that connection. So that's really what started it all. And we went down there, we visited Derek, we saw the operation, and we were like, so like, what can we do? What's wrong? Like, what's not working? And he's like, what isn't wrong? Like, everything is so, like there's so many orders. He's the only person making them. There were so many challenges, right? There were so many things that could be improved. And there were so many products that could be developed that weren't. So, when you're a one-man operation doing everything, you don't have time to experiment. You don't have time to try things differently because, by the time you've done one test, you have like 10 other orders that are just waiting to go out. So we formed this amazing also partnership where, we realized like, hey, we can do all the experimenting for you. And, you bring the animals, you bring the expertise. I mean, they've been doing it for 20 plus years, thousands and thousands of prosthetics for animals of all kinds. So, we filled all the gaps, and we started with one product in particular, the full-in prosthesis, which at the time was the biggest challenge for them. It would take like 20 hours of his time to make one of those because you have to mold the entire dog. There's nothing to mount to, there's no limbs. You have to create a vest. So they would mold the entire dog. They would create these like 80-pound plaster molds to then carve and shape. They would pull foams and plastics and composites, and they would have to trim it and send it out for fitting. And if something wasn't right, they'd have to rebuild it. And it was just ridiculous to be doing as such a small operation.
Do you have an idea of how long that process took?
It was, so in terms of like his time alone, it was like 15 hours.
Okay.
Insane for one device. For the customer, it could be months.
Okay.
You could be waiting for months to get your device back just because, there's so many people waiting in the queue to get one. They take so long. There's so many other products that have to be made. It was, at the point we came in, they were literally having to turn down orders. There's so many dogs that like need something like this, but they didn't have the capacity. And it wasn't like they could just bring someone else on. What he was doing was so unique. You had to have been doing this for the past like 10, 15, 20 years to even come close to that sort of fidelity, the accuracy, like the touch that he had was just incredible because it's not like working with a human. They can't just say, oh, that doesn't fit right. Like, can you tweak this? Oh, the gate's a little bit off. It's like, it really takes a lot of just, real world experience to have a feel for things like that, that only, he had. So that was like the big thing. That was like, we're going to fix that for you. Like, we're going to figure out how to do something different here. This is a huge opportunity. There's so many dogs that need this. We don't care what it's going to take. We're going to figure that out for you. And, that's where it really started.
This is so interesting to me because from what I can see, right? This is all like such new information because a lot of people watching or listening have seen the heartwarming video on Facebook where they give a dog a 3D printed prosthetic leg and he's running with his family again, or they make a little wheelchair for a turtle that was 3D printed and now he can move around again, and it's adorable and heartwarming, and I see them blow up all the time, but I didn't realize that there was a practical side to it, if that makes sense. You said there are thousands of prosthetics that Bionic Pets and you have worked on together. Do you have a question about 3D printing? If so, I would love to answer it. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments down below, or go to 3dprintauthority.com/forms to submit your question. Thanks.
So, I mean, they've done in their like 15-year history, I think the number is like over 25,000.
Okay.
The past year of working with them, we've done, I think, just over 100 devices 3D printed. Okay. But I mean, there's communities for these families, for these dogs. It's a big thing when a dog has, or anyone, any animal or person, anything that has a limb amputated. It's a big change, and there's not a lot of resources available for these families. So there's these communities. There's one called the Tripause community, and they have thousands and thousands of people in this Facebook group, all of which are like sharing resources and sharing ideas. And my dog just had a surgery, and this is happening. Like, have you seen this? What should I try? It's not a common thing, but it's still common enough where people get together and they try to share resources and advice, because it's just not very many resources. So it's a lot more than I think people realize.
Yeah. This is so heartwarming. I wasn't entirely sure we would get here, but this is great. So it sounds like it's primarily dogs that you work with. Is that fair?
Primarily, yes, but not
Okay.
only.
Okay. So what role does 3D printing play in this process? I know we got a little glimpse of, we'll call it 2 work days, but then a couple months to go from seeing the dog to like finished product with what they were doing before. How have you worked with them and worked with 3D printing to change that process?
Yeah, so it's changed in a lot of ways. So starting with the full limb prosthetic, that's the main product that we developed together. And at that time, to give some context to like when we started, we said, hey, yeah, we can do that. So they were like, great, shouldn't take that long. Like, they started accepting all of the orders. Anytime somebody would say, hey, I want one, they'd say, great, we can do it. We're working on something new. So people were paying. The log was getting long. I think there were like 40 people on the list waiting to get one. And we hadn't printed a single thing yet. We didn't even have a printer that was big enough to print one of these. I think we were actually still in the basement. We were still in the basement at the time. And then on top of that, Derek from Bionic Pets said, oh, by the way, we're filming a new season of our show, Wizard of Paws. Do you guys want to be on it with this new prosthetic that you're working on? We'll come to your space and we'll film everything. And we're like, yes, we're in a basement though. We were like, yes, like very hesitantly said yes to that, because it's such an incredible opportunity. But of course, we had to very quickly move out of the basement, find a space, and design this product that had never been done before. So it was definitely a crazy few months. But let's see. I mean, we started with the design process, right? That same process we apply for anything. We took a survey of everything that had been tried. What were all the things you tried, Derek? Like, what's working, what's not working? Where are the biggest bottlenecks? What's taking the most time? What's the most expensive material? Where's everything going wrong, right? And it turned out like the entire process from like the mold to the actual device itself was like just tremendous. The plaster, like the amount that you need for an entire torso is just crazy. The plastics, the sheets of them, crazy expensive because you need so much of it for these devices. So we were like, all right, we really have to start from scratch here. We started with, so basically they take a mold of the dog, they wrap it in a tape that hardens, you take it off. They would fill that with plaster, and we said, why don't we try scanning it? So we started to 3D scan those, and we figured out a workflow to 3D scan that, the outside, but still get an accurate inside. So great, we have a 3D model of the dog that we can work with. Next was, all right, he was already making a design. The design that he was making was working, except it was just very hard to change. It was too heavy, it wasn't breathable, it wasn't flexible where it needed to be. It was all one material. So we had to figure out, one, how to design it, how to design something so custom, so intricate repeatably, but also how do you then produce that in a way that's lightweight and flexible and repeatable and doesn't require lots of manual labor. So on the design side, we teamed up with a company called Landau Design and Technology, an amazing designer that we met when we were in Philadelphia. I think we knew one of our professors, we linked up with him, and he was doing computational design, designing like 30-acre green roofs, all using algorithms. And we were like, at the time, we were like, what does any of this mean? Like, how did we wrap our heads around it? But all we knew was that he could plant thousands of trees, and by moving a few sliders, all of the trees would change their location and proximity to each other. So we're like, if you could do that for trees, could you do that for physical products? So we very quickly brought him onto the team. And Chris Landau's just been an incredible asset in that form, helping us to create this digital workflow. So basically, we brought the additive side. We worked with 3D printing in school. We knew what it was, and we knew that there was potential for it. So we brought the technical aspect, the design aspect, the prototyping. He brought the digital side, and together, in the span of I think only a few weeks, it was a crazy crunch getting ready for the TV show. We were sleeping here and working long nights. We figured out the right process to basically automate the design of these devices. So this is what the jacket looks like. And you can see it's crazy intricate. Like there's a mount here that's nice and solid, nice and thick, but the ends are nice and flexible. So figuring out all the perimeters and all of the requirements for the device, we were able to build into an algorithm. So instead of having to draw each spline and do all the lattice like custom and making all these features, we upload the scan, and a few minutes later we have the final designed unit. So that was key to making this repeatable. It was key to making it more accessible because it didn't require, a very talented designer to sit there and design each one. It was a software. It was automated. So we figured that part out. And then on the printing side and the production side, we tried every freaking printer and material and process and post finishing. And I mean, we were working with like industrial printing companies down in Texas and across the states. Nobody could do it. Nobody could figure out how to print something this big, this intricate, and as durable as we needed it. We used nylon and PETG and what else did we use? Polycarbonate and composites, and nothing was working until I think my partner was like playing around with some samples we had, and he was like, "Why don't we try TPU?" And we're like, "May as well." We'd never used TPU before, but we had some, and we printed it, and like, that was it. And we were like, "All right, this is the stuff." We've done like a little teeny thing, and we were like, "It's stiff here, but it's flexible here. This is perfect." So we scaled it up, and very quickly found a supplier, found the right kind of printer, and we started producing them. And it's all TPU. Everything we do now for these is TPU because it's so versatile. It's rigid where we need it rigid and flexible, and that applies to the jackets themselves, but now also all of the other components and other products that we've designed. It's just been like the golden material for this.
I was gonna ask if that was all the same material and then what material it was. So I'm happy you got there without me having to ask, because when you bent it, it looked like substantially different in terms of flexibility.
Yeah, yeah, it's all one material. It's all like at the bottom, we have a metal pylon adapter attached to this. It's not flexible. It's very durable. It's very impact absorbing. And then the rest, around the rib cage is nice and flexible. And the other requirement was it needs to be not only comfortable and safe in terms of wear, but if a dog decides to chew on it, it's not going to break apart. It's not going to, get eaten. I mean, one, TPU is used in dog toys, and two, it's freaking indestructible. Like, toss this out the window or on the 5th floor, and I could do it, 20 more times, no problem.
Yeah, I don't use much TPU, but this is such a glowing endorsement, and it makes so much sense in your application where it's technically an elastomer, but it's also fairly stiff, and just by changing the thicknesses, you can get those different properties.
Yeah.
Digging more into the 3D printing side of things, I know you've got a ton of machines behind you. What has your experience been with 3D printing as it applies to your business, and how has your experience with different levels of machine kind of shaped your understanding? Do you want to be a guest on this podcast? If so, go to 3dprintauthority.com/forms to apply. Thanks.
Yeah. So being that we're a startup, being that we have no funding, no investors, anything like that, everything we've done has needed to be scalable. Our first 3D printer was a Dremel 3D 45. It was one of the early, Dremel 3D printers. We were in school and we reached out. We were like, hey, we can't afford a printer, but we'll do free work for you. So they were like, oh, you mean like a marketing collaboration? We're like, oh yeah, one of those things. So they were like, great, you guys are, you're young, you have energy. This would be a great partnership. So we ended up teaming up with Dremel and, getting the laser cutter, getting the 3D printer. And that's where we were really like, all right, this stuff is cool. Like, we had the entire studio, like the entire program was like, can we use your printer? Can we use your laser cutter? We don't want to walk across campus to the schools. It was more expensive. So very quickly we were like, this is an asset. Like, this is a very valuable asset. We can leverage this to get jobs. We can leverage this to, show what we're capable of. We can have access to those resources. So it was game changing for us. When we couldn't afford things like business cards and, website fees and all of that, we were 3D printing terrariums and selling them in the pop-up shops on campus. We were 3D printing samples to give out. We were selling things. So, from day one, it was a very essential tool. It wasn't until Bionic Pets that we realized, okay, like this is game changing for more than just a little, startup in school. Like this has a lot of potential. But at the time, again, we were still a startup in a basement, so we had to start at the bottom. That's always been our ethos, like doing the most with the least. So to start, we were working with the most accessible desktop 3D printers, and you can see behind me, we have a whole wall of the artillery sidewinders. Fairly inexpensive, consumer grade 3D printer that we use to produce, hundreds of these, very reliably, very accurately, fairly fast. So, there's some companies that just say, all right, what's the most expensive advanced technology? Let's use it. Or like, why don't you start on the ground floor and, go as far as you can and then move up. Do as far as you can, then move up. And that's exactly what we've done. We actually, another example is this, during the pandemic when everything was shut down, things were very slow. We had a gentleman in the UK reach out, Justin Oliver Davis. He's a bilateral, so he's a amputee. He's missing both of his legs above the knee. And he's just like the most amazing person. He's climbed some of the tallest peaks in Europe. He's an amazing public speaker. He's changing people's lives. And he just messaged us one day and was like, hey, what material are you guys using? That's really interesting. And like being like obsessed with prosthetics for the past like however many years, I was like, we're using CPU. Like, what are you doing? Like, can we help you? He was like, oh, I'm trying to make myself in better feet. And instantly, like, that was my entire, like the height of the pandemic. Every single day we were collaborating, working together. He wanted better feet for exercising, for rock climbing. So I would design things in New Jersey, and he would 3D print them on his desktop printer in the UK. And they were, what we were printing, I actually have one here. They were far better, his perspective, not mine, obviously I haven't tried them. They were far better than anything he ever used on legs without knees. They're called short legs, but they don't have the knees. Better for lower to the ground climbing and exercise. He needed something that could roll. He needed something that was impact absorbing. He needed something that was modular so that when it was all muddy, he could go inside and he could change the sole. He needed something that was like grippy and flexible, but also like impact absorbing. These were all things, that he could 3D print in his living room that no company in the world was able to create for him on a higher production level. People have been working for years and years on advanced prosthetic solutions where this guy's 3D printing them in his living room, and it's enabling him to do so much more. So, to answer your question, I mean, 3D printing, has just become so essential in so many ways, not only for our business, but for the impact that we can have in the world with other people, with other animals. And it's been scalable, right? You can see we have the artilleries, and we just got in. I know you spoke with Mike Worski from Fulfillment Innovations very recently, one of his new Icarus 3D printers, and it's pretty game changing for us, I gotta say. It's really taking things to the next level, and we're gonna be doing some pretty big things soon. Big in terms of like, I just printed this last night in about 2 hours. So you print this on the artillery, this probably take about maybe 2 days.
A day? 2 days? Yeah.
Right, this is 2 hours. it's like, it's game changing, not only for prosthetics, but for product design in general. You know, localized, accessible manufacturing, opening up the door to so many more designers to be able to create products. I mean, I made a pencil holder in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I was like, oh, I'm not going to go to Target. I'm just going to print one. You know, it's like,
I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at my standard, rather boring desktop printers to my right, and I'm like, it's 4 hours.
it was like maybe 15 minutes. It's like, yeah.
So cool.
So, yeah, very exciting to have this machine. It's pretty large, as you can see, 3-foot build volume, high flow extrusion system. So it's got a titanium heater core with multiple heater cores on it. So the amount of plastic it extrudes is just insane. And we're so excited to not only have it, but to be working with Mike. I mean, they're about an hour and a half from us, you know, building these in Pennsylvania. And we're just so excited to be able to work with a local company like that, you know, leveraging their amazing technology.
Definitely. Excuse me. What you're working on is just so cool, in my opinion. I want to try to pull out just a couple themes to recap for the audience. 3D printing scaled with you guys. So you were able to start small and grow over time. And that's not something that you can do with an injection mold at all. Like the bar for entry is usually at least, you know, 5-10 grand compared to buying a $200 3D printer and then adding another one as you can scale, which just has such a powerful impact for businesses. And I think you guys are such a good example. The other one that I want to touch on is, it's hard to call it a digital supply chain or a digital inventory in your situation, but being able to design in one place and manufacture a prosthetic halfway around the world is so incredible. And getting design feedback, I imagine that very topical as of recording is the canal with the freighter that blocked up all the shipping channels. When you look at global supply chains, being able to send a part file in an email and instantly move your production of parts from one side of the world to the other, I think is going to have a tremendous impact in the years to come.
Absolutely. And people saw that with the pandemic, you know, somebody would design a new face shield and be printed everywhere immediately. No tooling, no waiting, you know, suddenly thousands and thousands were pouring out of cities everywhere. You didn't have to wait for somebody to, you know, do the molding somewhere. It was crazy.
Exactly. And eventually we got to the molding step, and that made sense. But 3D printing absolutely played a role there in making that PPE. We got one final question for you. But before we get there, I would love it if you could tell people where they can connect with you, where they can learn more about Dive Design, and if there's any special calls to action you'd like the audience to take. Now's your chance.
Awesome. Well, you can find us just about anywhere at Dive Design Co. Dive Design Co. on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I'm still learning how to use that, but whether occasionally. You can find us on LinkedIn. Our website is divedesignco.com. We're always sharing what it is we're working on. We love transparency. We love that about 3D printing. It can be transparent. Unlike with molding, who knows where it's made? You know, who knows where it's coming from? We like to be transparent. We like to connect with the people that we work with. We like to connect with the people that we design for on the animal prosthetic side. It's not something that we say, hey, you know, here's a solution. Does it work for you? If you say, what are your requirements? Let's design it for you. You know, we started using things like virtual reality to take a scan and draw it. In 10 minutes, we can design a new prosthetic that's never been made before, send it over to the owner and say, hey, does this look like it's what you're talking about? And we're good to go. You know, it's just amazing in so many ways. Going back to the digital inventory thing, like you said, having access to that.
Definitely. Final question is, outside of your products and what you're doing, what is one thing that you see in the world of 3D printing that you're really excited about, whether this is a trend, a technology, or just, you know, something that you want to see more of?
Yeah. Right now for me, it really is FDM. We are obviously we're utilizing it, leveraging it, but we want to see other people do the same. It's people. I feel like a lot of people think it's tapped out, like onto MJF, onto SLS, on all these other things. Of course, all of those things have value in their own ways. If you use the right tool for the job, but there's still a lot of potential for the most accessible, at least I think, type of 3D printing out there, and especially with things like high flow. These systems are getting upgraded, and I think things like this are game changing. I've been putting calls out on LinkedIn for designers who want to collaborate. Just been saying, hey, send me material you want to use. I'll print it. We'll ship it back to you and see what you think. This is a accessibility that we haven't seen before for designers in terms of making products. So we want to put it out there as an experiment to let other designers play around with. If you're a designer, if you're an engineer, if you want to design your own lighting, furniture, anything, send us the material and we will print it for you, because we also want to see what the boundaries are. We don't claim to be experts of everything. We understand that innovation is still to come, and we want to help to uncover it and see what's possible.
Awesome. Great answer. And I'm going to say a brave answer, because to your points, I see lots of MJF, high-speed sintering, SLS, that's the direction for real applications. But I would agree with you where there's still a lot further that FDM can be taken. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah.
Continue.
You're not going to make this with MJF. I think this is pretty cool. My friend designed this. We printed it. You're not going to make this with MJF. You're going to get, a gray part that, you're not going to want hanging in your living room. We're putting this over the conference room table. We printed it in 2 hours for maybe a few dollars in material cost. Just like you're not going to use this printer to create aerospace parts that are going to go, in an engine. Like, you're just not going to do that. But you have to, the point of this is to teach people, is to, show what's possible and design for the right constraints.
Definitely. You're also not going to do it on an MJF printer in 2 hours. It's going to take much longer than that. Use the right tool for the job. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and your experience and the really cool things you are doing with 3D printing. And we will look forward to connecting with you in the future. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my chat with Adam from Dive Design. To learn more about what they do and the services they offer, visit divedesignco.com. If you want to learn a little bit more about me and find all the episodes of the podcast in one easy place, visit 3dprintauthority.com. If you aren't already, please subscribe to 3D Print Authority. It helps the channel grow on whatever platform you might be watching or listening. And this episode was a little unique because it's the first time I was able to feature someone who is doing something really cool and unique with 3D printing. And I want to do more of those. So if you are doing something awesome with 3D printing, please consider going to 3dprintauthority.com/forms and apply to be a guest on the podcast. Until next time, happy printing.